with a panel discussion. The panelists will be myself, Pen Abdul, Mala Abdullahi Bamba, who is not here yet, and our moderator will be Farooq Atagara. Our topic is centered around scholarship, and we're going to be discussing the classical role of scholars or scholarship in Islam. And there are going to be some interesting, I think, back and forth between us. We have done this before, so inshallah we'll do this very well. Jazakumullah khair. The topic is quite grand in the sense that Islam is a religion of scholarship. Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala says in the Quran that indeed the scholars are those who fear Allah the most amongst His servants. Allah says, هَلْ يَسْتَوِي الَّذِينَ يَعْلَمُونَ وَالَّذِينَ لَا يَعْلَمُونَ. Are they equal, those who know and those who don't? The whole progress of Islam from the beginning to its end was determined by the quality of its scholarship. And there is a view by Uthman al-Fudio, who is my uncle, that when you see a people decline, then you should be certain that they don't have scholars anymore, or at least the quality of their scholars have declined. They are the ones who pull us out of moral decadence. They are the ones that are in charge of setting straight our character. The Prophet ﷺ said, إِنَّمَا بُعِثْتُ لِأُتَمِّمَ مَكَارِمَ الْأَخْلَاقِ, that I've been sent to complete the noblest of character. And then he said, Al-ulama warathatil anbiya, the scholars are the heirs or the inheritors of the prophets. Then he said, Innal ulama, indeed the scholars, lam yuwarithu dinaran wala dirhaman. They don't leave behind possessions of dinar and dirham. That's not their inheritance. Indeed, what they leave behind is ilm. And the Prophet ﷺ said, وَمَنْ أَخَذَ بِهِ أَخَذَ بِهَذٍ وَافِرٍ. Whosoever takes hold of that share that they leave behind, which is knowledge, has indeed gotten the most amount of share. So Islam is not really a religion of materialism, but of course it manages it properly. And amongst the people that have to be very careful with materialism is the scholars. Because without honor, without integrity, there is no scholarship. And one of the quickest way for scholars to lose their integrity is when they compromise on the spiritual front. And when the scholars are compromised, the ummah is compromised. And that is why we have to strive to have, a very strong hold in terms of scholarship as an ummah. It is quite clear that if you look at what's happening, it's daunting. It's quite sad that we have emphasized so much on the material front, on the boko front, on the dunya, instead of also concentrating or even giving more power or putting in more effort on the deen front. Why am I saying this? The Quran regards everything you own, everything you earn, as a tool to getting the akhirah. Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala says in the Quran, وَابْتَغِي فِي مَا أَتَاكَ اللَّهُ الدَّارُ الْآخِرَةِ. Seek with what Allah has given you from this dunya, the abode of the akhirah. وَلَا تَنْسَ نَصِيبَكَ مِنَ الدُّنْيَا. But don't forget the portion of your dunya. In other words, you are not supposed to be dependent. At least some people is their reality, but you are not meant to beg. You're going to, as a Muslim, you should have some sort of honor when it comes to earning and being dependent or independent and only seeking from Allah. But the scholars are those that, have to practice this more than anyone else. And when you compromise on the dunya front, there's a lot of problems. When scholars begin to haggle for political power, even if it's for the sake of others, and they begin to haggle for material gain, then right? There's a thughra. We have the opening and shaitan can come in, and then before you know it, we've lost focus. So this is what's going to be happening today. We're going to have these discussions. It's not going to be, I think, easy. I trust the moderator to raise pertinent questions that perhaps we don't even have to answer. We don't know the answer, but it is definitely, these are definitely questions we should ask ourselves. I will mention, we all know the importance of Imam Malik. We all know the importance of Imam Ahmad. We all know the importance of Abu Hanifa the first. And then we know the importance of Imam Shafi. All of them wrestled with the order of the day, the power of the day, so as not to compromise. Most of them were given jobs that they declined in the government of their day. And the only reason why they did that, and in fact some of them were actually, most of them, I can't see an exception amongst the four I've mentioned, were all actually tortured for rejecting positions in power, because they thought that if they did so, it's the beginning of the end. That's how they viewed it. And you see that in their attitudes, you see that in the attitudes of the Tabi'in, like Sa'id ibn Musayyib, one of the greatest of them all. And of course Hassan al-Basri, and so on. We have so many examples, and we'll inshallah try to highlight them as we speak. So now, it is my honor to invite our moderator, Malam Farouk Batagara, to come upstairs, come on stage rather, and of course my co-panelist, Pan Abdul, to also come on board. Farouk.
For a layman, how does he know who a scholar is? I think that's where I'll start with, and I'll start from the right.
ونعوذ بالله من شرور انفسنا ومن سيئات اعمالنا من يهديه الله فلا مضل له ومن يضلل فلا هادي له اشهد ان لا اله الا الله وحده لا شريك له واشهد ان محمدا عبده ورسوله اما بعد السلام عليكم ورحمه الله وبركاته. The question of who a scholar is, classically the scholars are those that right from onset, either from the beginning of their lives or at a later part of their lives, have dedicated their lives to learning the sciences of the day, cut across all the aspects of the Islamic knowledge, and then majoring in one or two aspects. And then the real hallmark of a scholarship is those that Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala has referred to as the Rabbaniyin. Kunu Rabbaniyin. So the real essence of scholarship is to nurture people upon the religion of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, by basing your tools of nurturing the ummah primarily on the tenets of the Sharia. So a scholar is known, there is no any big formula to it. A scholar is known by the depth of how he guides people using Quran and Sunnah of the Prophet sallallahu alaihi wasallam through understanding that comes as a result of years of learning and experience. Because there is the reading of the texts and getting the practical meaning of the text, and then there is the understanding that comes with the text of the Quran. Basically, knowledge is about interpreting the text and applying them. So the more you understand Quran and Sunnah, the more knowledgeable you are. Alaysa kadhalik. So it revolves around understanding Quran and Sunnah, but again, okay, I should bring it closer. So basically, a scholar, it's someone that has learned from a scholar and is teaching other people to groom scholars, and then is putting that knowledge into practice. Is that understood? He has learned from scholars, non-scholars, and then is also teaching others and is living his life accordingly. So to draw the difference between a scholar and a mere preacher or a student of knowledge, we have many preachers, right? Everyone can take from the statement of scholars and relate to others. Alaysa kadhalik. But for you to have the tools to be able to understand situations and then use the tools that you have, which of course comes from understanding the usul of the religion itself, the knowledge of the Quran, the knowledge of the hadith, the knowledge of the usul al-fiqh itself, understanding the religion, and then having the ability to extract meanings from the verses of Quran and the text, and then having also the ability to apply them in situations as they occur. Alaysa kadhalik. So a preacher, it's a mere transmitter. A preacher transmits the knowledge of the scholars. He relates, and that is why often at times the preachers are always relying on what? They are relying on the statement of scholars. But scholars are authorities by themselves, and you don't become a scholar overnight. If you read through the lives of scholars, you understand what, how they come about. Being scholars like Imam Shafi'i at a young age, his mom brought him to Imam Malik to learn. And then before coming to Imam Malik, he had already memorized the Muwatta of Imam Malik. And then from there, journey from one state to another, seeking for knowledge, and then understanding it, and then over time, it becomes part and parcel of their lives. And then you see it in their behavior, because the scholars are epitome of good moral behaviors. I hope I've been able to blab a bit.
Thank you very much. That's a very loaded statement with a lot to unpack. So basically, it doesn't just take knowledge for one to be a scholar, it also warrants dissemination of the knowledge. And I picked up on the issue of being autodidacts. So scholars have to have learned from others. You can't learn by yourself. Is that understanding correct, Mohammed? Perhaps you can shed some more light on some of that, and in particular, just the aspect of, so we know there are a lot of, we're talking about society, reformation, we're talking of society and reformation. So despite the various traditions discouraging scholars from fraternizing with leaders, how do scholars then enact their responsibility of being the spiritual guides of society? Because earlier when you were speaking, you mentioned how scholars are the inheritors of prophets. So how do they do that if there are many traditions discouraging fraternizing with leaders? So just to add some more on what Pen Abdul said, and to speak on how scholars should distance themselves from leaders.
Thank you. First of all, I think when we talk about autodidacts, we mostly refer to people like Ibn Hazm, one of the greatest scholars of Islam who authored Al-Muhalla. Ibn Hazm was an autodidact, meaning he learned by himself most of the times. He did not carry from scholars. And some of the scholars said one of the indications that he's actually an autodidact is the lack of sometimes the dismissal of what scholars actually said to an extent, but he's still an excellent scholar. We cannot, I think, produce the likes of him. And the scholars usually say he's an exception, meaning people shouldn't try to copy Ibn Hazm, meaning stay at home, use Google, and learn. It's important to understand that scholars are people that understand the verses of Allah more than anyone else. And they understand that to sell the ayats of Allah for a price is one of the greatest sins. And to use the Quran or the Sunnah to eat is also a sin. There is a very good hadith related by Abdurrahman ibn Shibrin radiyallahu an. قال رسول الله صلى الله عليه وسلم, the Prophet صلى الله عليه وسلم said that اقرأوا القرآن, recite the Quran, ولا تجفوا عنه, and don't abandon it, ولا تأكلوا به, don't use it to eat, ولا تستكثروا به, and don't use the Quran to gather wealth. The moment the scholar goes to people that have wealth and compromises for his own sake, he has, he has left that mark of scholarship because it's now personal. So the idea that the Prophet ﷺ in several hadith, whether it's in Abu Dawood, Ahmad, Tirmidhi, he has warned of scholars that, he actually said the scholar who goes to the people, the rulers, beware of him because he's a thief. That's what he said. And there's several other narrations relating to that. So the scholars came up with a condition which I think is important to clarify, because we know that great scholars have sat with leaders, and that's not the sin. The sin is sitting with people that lead, people that have power only for your own sake, for your own benefit. That's what Islam frowns upon. That's what the Sunnah frowns upon. But if you're going for the maslaha of the Ummah, that's fine. Ibn Taymiyyah has done it. Imam Malik has done it. My uncle Imam Malik, what's his name? Uthman Danfodia has done it several times. So that's not the problem. The problem is when they do these things for their own benefit, and then they come out and say that they've done it for the sake of the people. And that's why the scholars are they're the people that are most lofty, right, when it comes to the ummah, because they're up there and they don't compromise. And that's what we're talking about, not that it's haram to go to leaders and stuff like that. Jazakallah khair.
No, thank you very much, Malam Muhammad. You've added a bit more context to what Pen Abdul said. There would be an opportunity for Pen Abdul to perhaps, there's a slight difference in how you view things. Still on the topic, I would want to hear from you, Malam Abdullahi, about what gives anybody the standing to be able to speak to people, because in particular I will refer to the person Ali sent away from the mosque for warning people. He asked him a few questions about his knowledge of abrogation, and because he didn't know, he sent him away to stop warning the people. So given this antecedent, what would you say about how there's a proliferation of people just trying to warn others? What comments would you say, and if you have any other comments to what Malam Muhammad or Pen Abdul have stated? So the question is, given the antecedent of the athar where Ali sent away somebody from the mosque because he wasn't sufficiently knowledgeable on the science of abrogation. So what gives anybody the capacity to stand and warn people, given that there's an antecedent of Ali stopping somebody from warning? And if you have any other comments to make on what Pen Abdul or Malam Muhammad said.
Thank you very much. Bismillah, alhamdulillah, wassalatu wassalam ala rasulillah. Am I audible? Okay. Thank you very much. In addition to what the scholar said earlier, what makes one to be qualified to impart knowledge to others is the society need to have a system where one goes through, so that person after going through that system, that process, he will be qualified to deliver, to impart knowledge. It shouldn't be just left like that. Any Tom, Dick, and Harry can just mount the podium or the member or the masjid and start telling people whatever. There must be censorship, there must be sanctioning, there must be sifting. I remember during the Ottoman Empire in Turkey, they have very vigorous training for before one comes and stands before people and preaches. Initially, after one grows up, you have to go through a process of 24 years before one can come and sit down before people in the masjid and preach. Later, it was reduced to 16 years. The scholars stood up and started saying that, look, how knowledge becomes very cheap. You only spend 16 years before you can be knowledgeable. That is after you grew up, after going through the basics, not to start from the nursery, primary. So it's a rigorous process. After that, then one can come and deliver. Otherwise, it will be the opposite. Instead of guiding people, misguidance will come, creating of enmity, hatred, problems every here and there. So the society must ensure that there is a process, there is a system where one goes through and then that person will be qualified. Just like the system of ijaza. Before one can come and sit down and teach others Quran, he have to have ijaza from an alim. Ijaza means you have to study, read Quran from cover to cover perfectly before you come and sit before an alim who can test you from the beginning up to the end, and then he will give you a certification. Ijaza means certification that says that you or the learner received this learning of Quran from the sheikh, from the sheikh of the sheikh, from the sheikh of the sheikh, up to Prophet Muhammad sallallahu alaihi wasallam, up to Jibreel, up to Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. This is a certification that is normal in some places, but here you hardly hear of that. Even hadith have this kind of certification. So the system and the process is very, very important. There must be codes, there must be rules, and there must be people who are keeping eyes, who are vigilant. When that scholar or that certified person derails, goes off the road, then they can caution him. Just like you have engineers, you have this society of engineers. Lawyers have their own guild. Doctors have. Even a certified doctor, when he makes a mistake, they review, they can withdraw the license, isn't it? We need that. Otherwise, everyone can come and claim to be an alim, to be a scholar, to be an imam, and then you can give any trash, any garbage that have. I think I have satisfied that answer. Thank you.
Thank you very much. Thank you very much for the input. So I think on this I will bring this back to more contemporary times. Apparently, there was a move by the military government of Muhammadu Buhari, 85, to censor the religion, but part of the pushback that he met was by the different sects. So who is responsible for the censorship? So Pan Abdul, if you can try to recommend practical ways where the system of ijaza can be brought back in contemporary Nigeria, a practical solution that we can look to do.
Well, you know, this particular issue has been a disturbing one. I think before we climbed up here, I was having the discussion with Brother Abbas Diab, that one of the challenges that we are faced with today is the challenge of lack of censorship when it comes to who preaches and what do you even preach. And the difficulty in regulating that is the democracy that we're in and the civilization that we find ourselves in today. Because what does it take for someone to be in his bedroom and then get a camera and start doing tafsir of the Quran? He has followers on Facebook. Nobody can stop him. So how many million people can you stop in Nigeria from doing that? And now that takes us back to the issue of, because the impact of it on social media is more than the physical one. If you ask me about the physical regulation, that would be easy, because I think there was a time that we started the process of getting the total number of mosques in Nigeria under whose leadership, so that we can harmonize everything. We wanted to do that under the Supreme Council. But if you are able to do that, at least you have the contacts. I know the Izala movement do have the contacts of all the mosques that are under them in their thousands. And then they could actually dictate who preaches in the mosque. So at least that's a step forward. But on a general perspective, it's really, really going to be very difficult because you are in a democratic setting. We made mention of the military era, and then the challenge they faced was the challenge of different sects. Now, this person is saying, who are you to regulate me? The other person is saying, who are you to regulate me? You need to be regulated. You need to be censored too. And then it becomes chaotic. And then to add to what Sheikh Muhammad has said, with respect to the issue of the fraternization of scholars with those in the position of authority, alhamdulillah, I made mention of the fact that it's not something that is 100% frowned at. If there is a need for the scholars to meet the leaders, that is preferable. That is what Islam wants. Now, I give you an example of Abu Muhammad Abba bin Abi Rabah. One of the great tabi'in is the student of Abdullah ibn Abbas. In fact, as a black man, you know how it sits, right? He was the official mufti of Mecca after the demise of Ibn Abbas. He was sitting in the seat of Ibn Abbas, to give fatwa. But during the reign of Hisham bin Abdul Malik, when Hisham was the leader of the Muslims, Abu paid him a visit in his palace. Now, first of all, he was dressed casually in a very normal, humble outfit of a scholar because he was not out there for this dunya. Now, that's one thing. When you meet the leaders, you need to disarm them because they have material things. So you need to meet them as someone that does not give any second thought to material things. You need to go as an ascetic that you are, because scholars are supposed to be ascetics. So he says, Zahid, he went. And then people were looking, who is this man with his tattered clothing? And then a lot of people could not have access to the palace until when the leader of the Muslims saw Atta bin Abi Rabah, and then he asked them to usher him in. And then when he went, all the chiefs and all the kitchen cabinet guys were there, and everyone was asked to stop whatever they are doing because Atta bin Abi Rabah has entered the palace. And then the first question, now to bring it back to what Muhammad said, you go there with the intention of solving the problem of the ummah. The first question the leader asked him was, Ya Aba Muhammad, ma hajatuk ya Aba Muhammad? What is your need? What brought you to this palace? The first thing the leader said was what? Ahlul Haramain, Ahlullah, Jiranu Rasulullah sallallahu alayhi wasallam. He said the people of Haram, the people of Mecca and Medina, the neighbors of the Prophet, give them their rights. He called his scribe, rights, give whatever is due to the people of Mecca and Medina. He asked him again, do you have another need? He kept saying, the people of Ahlul Thughur, the border patrol, if you don't take care of them, your societies will be in danger. Give them their rights. What do you want again? Until he exhausted all the people of Najd, and then he went to the people of the book. Ahlul Dhimma. La yukallafuna ma la yutiqun. Do not this is a scholar advising the leader. Do not overburden the Jews and the Christians beyond that which they can carry, just because they are living in the Islamic State. And then the leader instructed his scribe to write this. And now the beauty of it, he kept asking, waiting for Abu Muhammad to say that this is what I want. I have a son. I want him to be given scholarship. I want my son to be given scholarship. I have a company. I want contract. He was waiting. He was asking him, Ma hajatuk ya Aba Muhammad? Until he said, Wallahi, I don't have anything. But my last advice to you, ittaqillah fi nafsik. Wa'alam annaka khuliqta wahdak, wa tamutu wahdak, wa tuhsharu wahdak, wa tuhasabu wahdak. He said, fear Allah. Know that you are created alone. You will die alone. You will be resurrected alone, and you will be questioned alone. The leader of that time started crying. And then the gist of it, to cap everything now, because your fear is because of compromise. لِيَشْتَرُوا بِآيَاتِ اللَّهِ ثَمَنًا قَلِيلًا. They sell the verses of Allah for miserable price. Contracts, having access to seat of power for miserable price. Allah says, ثَمَنًا قَلِيلًا. Paltry price. And that is what we see people doing today. And now, when Abu Muhammad left the Now, the king now sent someone with black leather with money inside to give to Atta bin Abi Rabah. He refused. And then the scholar said, Wallahi, he left the palace of the king without taking a sip of water. But everything he said, the leader heeded. Can we say the same today? It's important. In fact, as a scholar, you feel honored to be by the side of the president. No, it is the wealthy people that should be honored to have the privilege of seeing someone that is saying, Qala Allah, Qala Rasulullah. Not the other way around. So you cannot be in the hands of rich people. Allah has given you ilm. Allah has given you knowledge. So when that happens, what is going to happen now? The society becomes, and that is what Sufyan al-Thawri, he said. He said, the scholars, they are the doctors of the religion. Listen, they are the doctors of the religion, while the sickness of the religion is wealth. He said, if the scholars are afflicted by the disease of the religion, who is going to cure the disease? Wealth is the disease. The scholars are the cure. If the scholars are running after wealth, compromising and mortgaging the truth, who will take care of the disease of the ummah? Barakallahu feekum.
Thank you very much. So you've raised some very interesting points, and I'm going to take you up on some of the things you've made, some of the points you've made. Surely there was an era where there were provisions made for scholars, like endowments. So scholars also need to survive. The existence of scholars in every society is a communal obligation. Everybody is culpable, but if one person chooses to be the scholar, then everybody is absolved of blame. So given this scenario, what would you say about, rather than nitpicking on the scholars, surely there's a communal obligation. What should we do as a society and not the scholars? Because we're going in terms, I'll get back to you to give a proper answer on that. But Malam Muhammad, if you can just speak about how endowments worked in eras gone past and how there's an absence of provisions for scholars for their basic needs to be met, right? How does it work? How do you reconcile that? And also, how do you reconcile that with the fact that during the era of the most excellent example, the Sahaba, we know that Umar would take turns with his neighbor so that he can go and meet his needs and alternate with his neighbor so that his neighbor can go and learn on their behalf, and then they would share knowledge. How do you reconcile balancing making your ends meet with scholarship, as well as arrangements where scholars can devote their lives to scholarship?
Bismillah. It's a very good question. I think the Prophet ﷺ had a problem with people taking, we know the issue where Umar ibn al-Khattab said he will take care of the hypocrites for the Prophet ﷺ, meaning since we know they're the source of fitna, let's get rid of them. The Prophet ﷺ said, don't do that, because they will say, Inna Muhammadan qad qatala ashabahu, that Muhammad kills his ashab, his companions. The Prophet could have easily regulated speech, he didn't. The Prophet ﷺ just gave you the implications of the speech you made. So I think the idea of regulating speech or censoring them beyond a certain scope, which actually the Constitution can actually take care of, is a bit of a dangerous thing for religion to dwell on, because the Quran is an interpretative or interpretable text, and you have to keep interpreting it. And you have to allow scholars to have the capacity and ability and the wherewithal to see how they can apply it at different times. That's why if you pick up a tafsir of the Quran in the 7th century, it's not the same with the tafsir. In my view, I think the tafsir of the past are not necessarily, all that perfect. I'm not saying they're good, they're bad, but there are some contemporary issues that are fiqhi, some of them are aqdi, right? They deal with aqidah that we need to actually address within our own scope and within our own times. It's very important to note that what you said is actually perfectly correct. In fact, Imam al-Ghazali said in his Ihya, which is a book a lot of people criticize, and I know why, but that's not the problem. But he said something, it's an observation he made, and he was warning people he was warning scholars, his colleagues. He said he has noticed everybody is moving away from medicine, which he thought they should study, and going to study the Islamic sciences. And he said the reason why they're doing that is because the Islamic sciences, the issue of jurisprudence, was actually very prestigious. The Khalifa had a great deal of endowments for that, and rich people. In other words, the institutional state was catering for scholars, was in charge of the scholarship, the members of the scholarship board, right? But medicine wasn't really a big deal. It was a personal thing, so people didn't study it. So he was kind of warning, potential scholars to study medicine. Now, if you look at it, it's the other way around, because I think it's very correct, Farouk. Scholars have to be incentivized. It's quite far-fetched to assume that scholars should just survive because warathatil anbiya, they're like the scholars. But the Prophet ﷺ sought his wealth. He cooked, he ate, right? He walked in the markets, he bought things. So they have to survive. But this is the problem, and this is a fardu kifaya problem, I think. I don't think that Allah will punish one person or two people. Allah will question the whole ummah for not providing a very well-balanced institution that took care of scholars. And that's the problem. If scholars don't have an institution that is tasked with taking care of their expenses, their daily lives, I think, again, it's far-fetched to assume that they're just going to be zuhad, ascetics, that they don't have ambitions, they don't want to marry, they don't want to have kids, they don't want to buy things. That's not going to happen. It's not going to work. It has never worked before. Even the issue of entering paradise, right? The Prophet incentivized it. The Prophet ﷺ gave people what they deserved. He gave Sahaba a lot of money when there was booty. He ensured that they had furniture in the house. The Prophet ﷺ particularly had some very special moments with the young Sahaba to ensure that they're married, they have things they needed, and stuff like that. So it's the institutional approach for me. I don't think that it's fair to assume that all scholars will just sort out themselves because they just deserve that kind of capacity. I think they have to have an institutional approach as well. Jazakallah khair.
Thank you. So thank you for that. And if what I understand is there's room for provision to be made for scholars to be able to focus on nurturing the spiritual well-being of society. And these are efforts that will be made by non-scholars as well as the scholars. Okay, that's well understood. So obviously Nigeria being a multi-religious state, so perhaps the scope, especially for the northern states, to make relevant provisions, but there's always, and I've heard this from many quarters, this view that things that, so this is something that has emanated from Western thinking, the distinction of state from church or religion. So, Mala Abdullahi, I think the question I would ask you would be around, starting with something very practical like pilgrimage. To what extent should government be involved in affairs like pilgrimage and also the welfare of scholars, both at federal government and at state government, especially for states with predominantly Muslim communities, or otherwise, or perhaps there's room for provision to be made even in a multi-religious state like the federal government of Nigeria.
Okay, thank you very much. But Perhaps will you allow me to speak about the Waqf in addition to what Malan said before I answer my question? Waqf is a system that is almost alien here. We hardly hear of it, or even if we hear about it, we hardly conceive or understand what is it. But Waqf have been there long ago. A companion of Prophet Muhammad sallallahu alaihi wasallam said, I don't know any companion of Prophet Muhammad sallallahu alaihi wasallam who can do Waqf but did not do. Almost every Sahabi have Waqf. It is common among them, as common as having phone, handset among us. That Waqf was a tool to support scholars and education. That is how education become rampant. I will give some examples of how they become very innovative in using Waqf before I go back to education. In the society of Muslims, there was a time when they had an insurance to insure plates of food that is backed by Waqf. How? Prophet Muhammad said, if a woman is cooking food, let her make the food to be more so that she can extend it to neighbors or others. In the process of giving a child this food in a plate or in a container to take it to the other house, maybe on the way coming back, that container or plate falls down and got broken, the insurance take care of it. They will take this broken plate, go to the insurance office, and then it will be replaced automatically, and it is backed by Waqf, endowment fund. There's a city close to Turkey, I think. They used to have a small forest close to that city. And there are some wild animals in the forest. There's a time in the year where the wild animals can't get enough food to eat. So they leave the forest and come close to the city. And they have friction with the people in the city. They get killed, they kill, they maim, they injure others, they got injured. So the people sat down and thought, and then established a Waqf that will provide food. Anytime when there is a shortage of food for this wild animal, the Waqf will provide food and be taken to this animal, wild animals in the forest, to be given. That is how, to what extent they become very innovative to use the Waqf. There is a city, and again, they have a lot of stray cats in the city. Some of these cats get injured, so they established a hospital for cats. Let me repeat, a hospital with doctors and nurses for who? Cats. And this hospital is being sponsored by Waqf. To that extent, they got innovative of using Waqf. Let me come back to education. Before education, let me say how rampant Waqf is. When the Sahaba took Islam to Baghdad, and people of Baghdad become Muslim, the Sahaba did not stay in Baghdad. They went to Basra and Kufa. That time, Basra and Kufa were no man's land. So they stayed there and they shared the land of that place among themselves. Before they all depart, go back to their Lord, all of them made that share of theirs, of the land, to be Waqf. So there was a time in history when the lands, the whole lands of Basra and Kufa were Waqf. Endowment fund accruing money, and this money is dedicated to either school, hospital, orphanage, anything, think of it. Coming back to education, in their time, there was Darul Hikmah, the house of wisdom, where knowledge is being, where people of knowledge come and research and study, impart knowledge. And those resource persons were not necessarily Muslims, not only Muslims. Even people of other faiths are being brought from where they are to come and research and teach people. This Darul Hukmah was backed by Waqf. Among of the directors of Darul Hukmah was Al-Khawarizmi, without whose contributions to knowledge, we wouldn't be able to use our phones and computers, because he's the one who created algorithm That is what it is. That is why it got its name from Al-Khwarizmi, algorithms. So without algorithm, you can't even do quantum computing. I don't know whether you know anything about quantum computing. That is compound way of doing computing. Just think of the Solana network. I don't know whether you've heard of Solana network. Have you heard of Bitcoin network? Bitcoin network is there, has been there for about 15 years and did not stop for all these years. It's very strong, but it's very slow. Now Solana does what Bitcoin does. I think in every how many hours Bitcoin creates one block. Solana creates 600 or 700,000 calculations in a single second. All these are possible with that algorithm. So Waqf supported education very well. There's a scholar that I forgot his name. He said that when Europeans come to conquer Muslim world and took over this world, they said that you hardly find a man or woman who is not educated or lettered. Because then when they create a school, they put a waqf to support it. They don't create a school and get school fees from it. No, they put a strong waqf that brings a lot of money in it to support the teachers and the students. That is how they got education become very, very common. So even now, after the Ottoman Empire Caliphate went, I think you know that it is 101 years now after the demise of the Caliphate, 1923-24. It was the end of the Ottoman Empire after about 600 years. There was a lot of waqf for schools and mosques. We know that we have some universities that are over 1,000 years. Al-Azhar University. The source of the university was a woman named Fatima, isn't it? And that mosque created the university, and the university is thriving. Before it, there is Jami'atul Qarawin. It's also the source is a woman. I don't know why women are conquering things like that. There are a lot of mosques in the north of Africa that are about 300, 400, 500 years that were established by women. And you know, in Islam, mosques are a source of knowledge. All these mosques are supported by strong waqf. Even after the colonialists came and took over Muslim countries and confiscated a lot of waqf because they stole a lot of waqf. Because you know, colonialists, the 101 of colonialists is to do what? It's not to bring you civilization, but it's to take your wealth. That is how they have been doing for Africa. They've been robbing Africa for over 300 years, but every time they see that Africa have more and more resources. Yeah. When these Europeans came and confiscated a lot of waqfs, there is still little waqfs left in some countries, in Muslim countries, in Iran, in Iraq, in Turkey, in Jordan, Northern Africa. A researcher said a mosque in Turkey now that is backed by waqf or supported by waqf, the pay of the staff is far more than the pay of the government that comes from the government. So to support education, to support scholars, we have to establish waqf. We have to make waqf to be common among us. And I'm very, very happy to announce that IOFI, the Accounting and Auditing Organization of Islamic Financial Institutions, issued a guideline for establishing waqf. You know, they issue ma'ayir shar'iyya, guidelines to issue banks, Islamic banks, to issue takaful insurance companies. Now they have issued guidelines how to establish waqf. I can share the guidelines with us so that we see how to establish waqf. Waqf is a perpetual source of reward for you. Up till now, Uthman ibn Affan have been engraved for over 1,400 years, but up till now, his waqf is still among us. So waqf is like this. Even after we leave, the waqf will outlive us and the reward will keep coming. So that's what I want to say about waqf. But what will the government do to us? I believe the 101 of democracy is if you are law-abiding citizen, pay your taxes, and participate into election, you have the right to tell the government what to do to you. Otherwise, you don't elect that person next time. So you have to stand up, get your consultants, sit down and articulate a bill, and then take it to your representative and mount pressure on this representative to present it as a bill before the National Assembly, and it has to be passed, and then you will get what you want. But sitting down, folding her arms, not saying anything, nothing will happen. The story will continue repeating itself because you keep treating it the same way. So we shouldn't keep quiet, we should stand up, we should speak out. Thank you very much.
Thank you very much for the very deep comments, and with practical examples of how things have worked in the not so distant past. It's very unfortunate that some of the biggest endowments today are held by non-Islamic institutions. Like Harvard has a very big endowment, and fund managers would leave the city or Wall Street to manage endowments for universities like that. So, and obviously it's not very Sharia compliant in the form that it's being done. So, but the takeaway I'm having from especially the last comments made by the panelists, is that there's a big scope for the society, the Muslim Ummah, and not just the scholars, the specialists. Is like, I've heard this example being made, the part of Iman that is denoted by just taking something harmful from the road. And it doesn't just stop at taking something harmful from the road. If you can be a specialist in finance and you can finance 6-lane highways, the Prophet ﷺ said, the best of you is the one that's most useful. So if you can organize the financing for 6-lane highways that will ease movements of people, traffic that would otherwise take 6 hours, you make things easy for people and it takes an hour. So there's room for specialists in finance and engineering, people from the wider society, jurists, to come together to create an enabling environment for the scholars to actually provide their usefulness. It's not all about scholars not doing what they're supposed to do. Is my understanding correct? Is my takeaway correct? And if you can just shed some more light on that.
Well, I think I was watching a video of late Sheikh Abubakar Mahmoud Gumi. He was invited to open the school in Katsina then. That was in 1992, I think, just shortly before his death. And then he was saying that even if there are no students, it's very important for the society to keep paying the scholars. He categorically made mention of this. He said because of their importance in the society. Now, if you go to Egypt, Dubai, Saudi Arabia, most of the scholars that teach there, they are under the payroll of the government, right? So, because it's almost like an Islamic state. So they have that enshrined in their constitutional lives. So you can, for example, you go to most of these Arab countries, the imams that preach in the mosque, you see their houses are part of the architecture of the mosque. So the architecture, when you see the architecture of mosques, for example, in Dubai and other places, the houses of the imams are part of the architecture of the mosque. So the imam is always available. In Egypt, I was there last year, so the mosque I was praying in, I was always in the mosque. The imam, because his house is in the mosque, in fact, he comes and stays behind, looks at the time, 1 second he does not miss. He's waiting for the time that they put there to pray. And I used to say that it's only in Nigeria that you have 5 minutes reserved for the imam. Because we love big manism. Yes, it's only in Nigeria that you see Adhan is for 3:50. Iqama, 4 o'clock, 5 minutes for imam. What is imam doing between Adhan and Iqama? Because we love to appear big in Nigeria. It's amana. I just use this opportunity to chip this in. But as I was saying, now that is possible in environments like that. But in our complicated society, The only thing we can be able to advocate for is what Brother Muhammad and our Sheikh has stated, the issue of waqf. If there is endowment, we have rich people, we have wealthy people. The reason Allah gave us wealthy people amongst us is because Islam is in need of money. Otherwise, Allah wouldn't have given any one of us wealth. But Islam is in need of wealth. So the wealthy ones amongst us needs to be educated. I know Sheikh Abdullah, they've been trying with this issue of awareness around the waqf. But it is only through that waqf where you know that this is waqf, you have nothing to be proud about again about it, that it belongs to me. It's waqf lillahi azza wa jal. Now, if we take the money and sponsor scholars and we pay them, you cannot sit down and try to regulate the scholar. Because the problem now is if you're under the payroll of any politician, he dictates to you what to say. He controls your speech. And then you dare say something that is against what he likes, he calls you on the phone. And then from there you start what? Compromising on the truth. Now, we need that endowment so that it will be a collective pool of wealth. And nobody can lay claim that I'm the one sponsoring this particular scholar. But the reality is, we could be having it easy because we are other professionals. We did our education, we study other things, then we are independent. So we are not seeing things actually from the perspective of the scholars that throughout their lives, we are not scholars, right? We are just amplifying the voices of scholars. I used to tell this to people that I'm just an amplifier. I amplify the voices of the scholars. I'm not a scholar. But now because we are privileged, we do other things. Maybe we are professionals. You are an engineer, you're a lawyer, you're an architect, you have your company, you are doing this and that, you are comfortable financially. You are not seeing things from the perspective of these scholars that wake up in the morning. After Salat al-Fajr, there are students that he has to teach. By 9 o'clock, there are students. After see, let Albani Zaria, because he was also what? A professional ICT person. But he was saying that before he comes out to his Darul Hadith to teach Hadith, his wives are already there because he cannot be teaching other people's wives while his wives are at home to cook for him. So his wives are already there before he comes. And then perhaps he said he will reach house before them. So will he start asking for food? He said out of necessity he has to get them cooked. He said the reason he got them cooked was because they have to go out to learn. But now because he has a system, he has a school, right, that is bringing money. So he's able to sustain that life. Now, apart from the scholars also waiting for others to set up endowments so that the fund can be used to sponsor scholars, what stops scholars from also investing in other things? We have the cases of our classical scholars that were merchants. Do you understand? They were merchants, and even if they don't have money, they stayed and did what was important for them to do without having to compromise on the truth. Imam Shafi'i was in Egypt. He invited Imam Ahmad bin Hanbal. Imam Ahmad did not have money to go to Egypt to meet Imam Shafi'i. You know what happened? It took him years. Imam Ahmad couldn't have money. Imam Ahmad wanted to learn. I'm saying that sometimes if you don't have the financial backing, you just have to go out of your way to do the right thing. Allah will support you. Imam Ahmad wanted to go to learn from Abdul Razak as-San'ani in Yemen. He didn't have money. Imam Ahmad trekked. He trekked from Baghdad to Yemen to learn from Abdul Razak. And from there onward, he moved to Mecca. And when the people of Mecca saw Imam Ahmad, they said, "You are looking frail and exhausted. Aren't you suffering?" He said, "What I've gained of knowledge from Abdul Razak, wallahi, is the pains you are seeing and the fatigue you are seeing in my body is nothing compared to the narrations that I got." And then he gave them the 2 chain of narrations he got from Abdul Razak from his scholars. And then that was the scholars now. Now, the other thing that you have to look at is, look at the lives of the Prophet. Muhammad kept reiterating, the scholars are the inheritors of the prophets. Now, the prophets didn't come to take money from people. Otherwise, their da'wah wouldn't have been successful. Wallahi, if they had burdened people with money, give me, their da'wah wouldn't have been. So, read the Quran.
all of the prophets, Allah told us, in ajriya illa ala rabbil alameen. My reward is upon the Lord of all that exists. I'm not asking you to give me any money for what I'm doing. My reward. This was the message that was echoed by all the prophets of Allah. And then to add to it, if the Prophet ﷺ could go days without food. See, Imam Ahmad, there were days that Imam Ahmad did not have food to eat. And his son, Abdullah, he said, Al-Mutawakkil ala Allah, after Ma'mun, Mu'tasim, and Al-Mutawakkil was the one that was friendly with the Salafist. He was even a Salafi himself. So there was that cordial relationship between him and the scholars of Salaf. Imam Ahmad did not have food. Al-Mutawakkil sent repeatedly, he was sending money to Imam Ahmad. Imam Ahmad was repeatedly asking them to take it back to him. And do you know what? They now took the money to the family of Imam Ahmad. Imam Ahmad was furious. Do you know what he said? He said to them that, what is wrong with you? I'm about to die. You want me to meet Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala? And then in my body, there will be the wealth of these people in my body? Imam Ahmad. When Imam Shafi'i taught Harun al-Rashid is, there is no Qadi in Yemen. The people of Yemen are in need of Qadi. Harun al-Rashid, because the scholars and the leaders were friends then. There was mutual respect. So Harun al-Rashid gave Imam Shafi'i the authority to choose who is going to be the leader of Yemen. It's just like your president sitting with the scholars today. Who do you recommend to become Minister of Defense? Who will you think of? Imam Ahmad, Imam Shafi'i, because Imam Ahmad was a student of Imam Shafi'i, he was frequenting his study cycles. Imam Shafi'i now called on Imam Ahmad that Harun al-Rashid has given me opportunity to appoint who is going to be the Qadi over the people of Yemen, and I'm submitting your name. Wallahi, Imam Ahmad, he said to Imam Shafi'i, Lawla al-ilm, Wallahi, I did not been, because of knowledge that I'm getting from you, I will never speak with you forever again. I left this dunya to come and seek for knowledge with you. You are giving me this word. You are recommending me to take the position of this dunya, and I've left everything to come and learn knowledge from you. This was the statement of Imam Ahmad to Imam Shafi'i. It's brought in the Muqaddimah of the Usul Sunnah of Imam Ahmad. So apart from endowment to support scholars, scholars should also start thinking of how to be independent financially.
And that's very, very useful advice for scholars So I think if anybody has questions, I think there's somebody going around. So if you can write it down on any piece of paper, there will be somebody going around to collect questions. But while that's being done, I will give Malam Abdullahi the opportunity to give any closing remarks, any final comments.
Maybe the closing remarks, I'm going to talk about two things. Going back to the Waqf because of its importance in the society of Muslims. There's a researcher that says almost no society, no civilization or belief preceded Islam with the Waqf. So Waqf is Islamic, pure Islamic. I would like to ask you a question. Among the universities that you know, which university is the most expensive university in the world? Can I have any idea? Which university is the most expensive university in the world? Any idea? Yes, Harvard. Harvard University is the most expensive university in the world. Do you know that Harvard University have the most successful and the biggest Waqf in the world? About 50 years ago, the worth of the asset of the Waqf of Harvard University was $1 billion. And it supports the budget of 1/3 of the budget of the University of Harvard. In 2020, the asset of the Waqf of the University of Harvard was $40 billion. $40 billion. As at 2022, the asset of the Waqf of Harvard University was $58 billion. a researcher, Sami Al-Falah, had said there is a very strong relationship between the size of the waqf of a university and its annual academic ranking. All the universities that have very strong waqf in the world, they cannot go out of the first 5 or first 10 in the annual academic ranking, like the MIT, Princeton, Harvard, Yale. You cannot say them out of the first 5 or first 10. Why? Because their waqf is very, very strong.
Is a sister or brother asked, or rather commented, that there is this habit of Islamic centers building shops for revenue generation, right? And they argued that perhaps it's even better to build classes or colleges alongside the schools or the mosques, so as to promote. That's a good observation, perhaps. Yeah, that's it. So, Muzammil? Okay. So, we are going to step out now and go to pray, inshallah, right? This is an annual iftar program by Al-Falah, which has happened 3 times. This is a 3rd one. Inshallah, if we're still alive, we'll be doing this continuously, inshallah, as we do all the time. Thank you very much for coming. This is by Al-Falah Academy, which is hosted, as you can see, by Muhammad Rashid, who is the head here with his people. Jazakallah khair, Muhammad, for bringing us here. Inshallah, I wouldn't say much because I'm already tired of raising my voice. Muhammad, Jazakallah khair, if you can come and say something. Khalas? Okay, so he has described where we ought to be going and how we ought to get there. So without no further ado, we can please gently use our doors. The female need to use which door? That one? The one to the left. That one, and the people, astaghfirullah, the men need to use this one and go straight back. Khalas. And there is an ablution center for women upstairs and men at the back. So we will go there, inshallah. Thank you very much for coming. Inshallah, there's enough food. I'm looking forward to that for everyone. Jazakumullah khair. We can't thank you enough for coming. May Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala put this on our scale of reward. And we have a foundation, inshallah. Muzammil, do you want to say something? We have a foundation at Al-Falah that we actually use as a means of helping rural schools or schools that are, a bit down there in terms of finance. And we help them to buy things they need in terms of infrastructure. We build it up to the level that's good for them. We've been working with 2 schools, actually 3 schools, and we've been doing our best. We have raised a lot of money in the past quietly and have done this. If anybody wants to be part of our foundation, Al-Falah Foundation, Muzammil, the very good looking man with the beard, is right there. Jazakallah khair. To give you more information, and inshallah we'll share the information with you on our digital platforms. Jazakumullah khair. Muzammil is doing a very good job together with brother Zahraddin for the foundation. May Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala bless them.